welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to walk you through a kind of tutorial using Lightroom and Photoshop, but mainly Photoshop, and it's how I create motion blur images from the photographs that I take. But also I'll also show you how, if you want to get like a little boat, for example, how we go into Google, download an image and then just cut out the boat, and we'll add that into the image. So join me and I'll walk you through the tutorial now. So now I've come into Photoshop and I'll show you the image that we're trying to recreate. And this is the image that we're going to try and recreate. We won't have the same boat, but I'll find a boat and I'll show you how I actually do this. So what I'll do is I'll go into my folder where I've kept all my images for this tutorial, and I'll share the first image with you. So this was an image that I took at Shell Bay, and what you can see, it's a sunrise shot. Now the way to start motion blur is if you do layer, duplicate layer, and in that way you've always got a background copy just in case you need it. So first off you do is you go in Photoshop, you select filter. Oh, I need to highlight the image, so select filter, go to blur, and then select motion blur. So as you'll see, you've got a slider here, and you've also got a directional button. So what to try and do, if you hold the shift key and slide the button round, that'll keep it horizontal and straight. And then what you can then do is you can change the strength of the motion blur that you want to add. So I'll have it right up at 2000, and then I select OK. So what I'll do is I'll do this again 2-3 times. So I'll go back to filter, motion blur, and it reapplies those settings. Again, filter, motion blur, and I'll get it to a point where I'm happy with it. So there we go, that's 4 times I've selected filter, motion blur. Now what I'll do is I'll go in to the S curve, and then what I'll do is I'll just click on the shadows, click on the highlights, and then I'll bring the blacks up. Oh, I'll just do a clipping so that I know that I'm only affecting that image. Pull the blacks up just a slight touch to soften the blacks. I'll pull down the shadows, and then I'll boost the highlights just to give it a bit of glow. That's what we're looking for, and that's all we need. So now if you do Shift or Command E, or if I highlight these two and I do Shift Command E, that collapses the settings into this image. Now what I want to do is go back to filter. I'll need to select my image again. Go back to filter, and then in here select camera raw. So now I'm in camera raw. What I want to do is just lift the exposure, and then I want to go down to clarity and push clarity slider right across, because what that does is it gives us all this definition in the lines here. Now what I want to do is just give it a wee touch of negative dehaze just to brighten the image a little bit. Give the vibrance a wee touch. Just check the highlights, check the shadows, see if I can boost the whites to give it a wee bit of a glow, just to about there. So you can just play about with this until you're happy, and then once I'm finished I press OK. That then takes me back to Photoshop and gives me that edited image. Now what I want to do is apply the boat. So if I go into Google and if I just do a search on yacht on horizon images, and there we go, there's a few here. So what I'll do is I'll select, oh, that's probably not, what if I put sailing boat on horizon images. There we are. So this is what I'm looking for. So remember, my image is brown, so there's an image there. So if I just 2 fingers or just left click, copy, switch over to Photoshop, paste that image in, there's what we've got, and scale the boat down. Now the boat's kind of going the wrong direction for us, so if I go into edit, transform, and then flip horizontal, that'll turn that image round for me, so it's going to sail in this direction. Right, I want to have the line level with the horizon where that boat's on. Now what I want to do is add a mask. So I'll select the image, add the mask layer. Now what I want to do is remove everything bar the boat. So what I'll do is I'll change my brush to black, because using the mask, if I click on the mask, you have a black brush. I need to change that back to black. And in order to rub everything out, you have a black reveals and white conceals. What I'll do is I'll increase the flow and the opacity of my brushes, and using the mask I'll just start to rub out. And the reason I'm using a mask is if I make a mistake, if I then switch to the white colour, I can then bring everything back if need be. So if I switch back to black, I can erase all of this information that I don't want in that image. And I don't want the glow, because I'll show you a little trick with the glow. Now if I zoom in, so I'm using Command and plus, I'll reduce the size of my brush, and then that allows me to get in closer, because all I need is the yacht. Now what we can try and do is use the, we could use the magic selecting brush, but it's much quicker if you, well, I find it much quicker if you get as close as possible to the outline of the image and delete more. There we go. So again, I'm rushing this just so that you can see what I'm doing. What you can do is select the magic brush now, have a tolerance of 10, press it and see if that works. So Command D to get rid of the marching ants, increase the tolerance to 20, select, and there we go. We can start to remove, if I switch that to white, we can start to remove all the yellow and white artifacts around the yacht, and then that just makes it quicker. And then we might have to go back and just give it a wee clean up with the brush, but to be fair, this is doing a pretty good job. So all I'm doing is I'm just clicking and deleting, but you have to change your brush colour to white for this. We need black for when we're using the brush. Let me just double check this. I'll go in here. Right, so there's still a bit of a changing back to black. Select my brush, zoom in, and then that allows me to get, select, I must Control D, so I must have had some marching ants. So if I can get close enough to this yacht, I'll just take away some of that edge and glow, because I'm going to show you a wee trick in a wee second. So if I reduce the brush, now because the boat's on the horizon, you don't have to be mega detailed here, but it does help if you got windows. It's worth cleaning up the windows just so you've got some form of transparency in your image. So if I go up again here and just take away the edge of the sailboat, so I mean this is not by any way really accurate, but it gives you an idea, and it'll take quite a while if you want to clean some of these images up. Right, so that, if I just reduce that a wee bit more and give ourselves a wee clean line under the sailboat, so when you zoom out you're really not going to see that much. Now what you can do is, if you want to increase the size of the boat, if it doesn't select, you do Command T and then hold the Shift key and then drag the corner, and that'll increase the size with its perspective. I'll just give it another wee nudge. Right, so that's us got our boat. Now what I want to do is to make it look a wee bit realistic. If I just select that and bring it down a wee bit, add a new layer, new layer, and what I want to do is call it the boat shadow, because remember the sun's on the other side and we will need a shadow. So what I want to do is pull and drag that shadow layer underneath the image of the boat. Then what I want to do is go to the pen tool, and then I want to reduce my opacity and my flow. I'll increase the size of the brush. Then what I'll do is I'll zoom in and I'll just lightly add a shadow under the boat. And there we have it. So if I pull back, you've got a wee shadow under the boat. Now, what we want, if you want to have a glow behind the boat, we'll go layer, new layer, and say sun. Then keep that layer below the shadow, because if we do a large circle, so what I'm going to show you is if I increase the brush size and I select the colour here, because that's going to be the closest to the light that we need, and I press, because I've got my opacity and my flow, put them back to 100% and then press once and twice. Right, now what we need to do is go in and delete the bottom half of that glow. So what I'll do here is I'll just reduce my brush size a wee bit more. I'll go into the lasso tools and I will create a square, and then all that allows me to do, if I use the erase tool, increase the size of the erase tool brush, delete that. All it'll do is delete what's been selected inside that box. Hit Command or Control D, that gets rid of the marching ants, and then you've got a wee glow behind the boat and you've protected your horizon line. Now if you want to reduce the intensity of that, all you need to do is slide down the opacity of that light, and we'll go to 42%. So it's just enough that brings up your boat, and there you have it. That's your image. So to finish your image, all you need to do is layer, flatten image, and then what I would do is file, export as a JPEG, and save that in images. We'll call it image C, and there we have a new image. So what I'll do is I'll take another image and I'll show you another way that it doesn't always have to be horizontal. You can have, it doesn't always have to be horizontal. What you can do is a vertical effect. So again, if I do layer, duplicate layer, and then that way I've got a copy, and I'll need a copy for this one. This would be nice if you had a series of boats, but I'll just show you this effect. So if I go into filter, blur, motion blur, now what I want to do, I've kept my settings at 2000, but holding down the shift key and bring round the directional gauge, what you want to do is have it pretty straight and vertical. There we go. Nope, not quite. And not quite again. This is fiddly. Trying this again. There we are. So if I click OK, now what I want to do is go back up to filter, motion blur, filter, motion blur. Right, so what I'll do now is I'll go back into the S curves, I'll select the shadow, I'll select the highlights. Now what I'll do is I'll just drag the blacks down, and because what I want to try and get is some form of definition in those streaks, and I'll push up the highlights so we get a brightness. So as you've probably noticed, if you're quite creative, these could make some nice backgrounds as well for certain images. So what I'll do is I'll rotate that around just so that it's a wee bit straighter with the lines. And if I now go filter, camera raw, and then if I do what I did earlier, I'll push up the clarity slider so we get a stronger definition of the lines, pull back the blacks, pull back the dehaze to brighten it up, lift the exposure, and then push the whites up as much as I can to here. It's quite a nice curtainy effect we're getting here. Right, so that'll do. Select OK. That'll take me back to Photoshop. Right, so here what we want to do is we probably want to bring back the horizon. So if I reduce the opacity, here you'll start to see what I've got in that image. So I'd like to have a bit of the horizon in the image, and then I'd like to have that bit of seaweed shown in the image. So what I need to do is I'll go down, select the layer mask, and then go back to my pen tool, make sure I've got black. But what I want to do is reduce the opacity and reduce the flow, increase the brush size, and then what I'll do is I'll increase the opacity of the image, because what we want to do is just get a definition of the area of where we're going to be working. Also the horizon line, because I want to have the horizon in. And then if I push the opacity right up, what you'll start to see is the bottom image starting to come through. So again, if I just lift the horizon, which actually looks quite squint in the image, but if I select white because I've overdone it here, then I'll take that back, just up the flow, up the capacity, there you go, take that out, and then reduce the opacity, reduce the flow, and then that lets me work. Well, I'm back on white, switch to black, and then I'll reveal the seaweed. So I've got the seaweed coming through now. Now what I want to do is kind of reduce the impact of some of the sand in the background. So switch back to white and then start to push that back into the image. And I'm only using this, it's not the prettiest image, but it lets you see that you can use motion blur for a lot of different effects. So if I do Shift E, if I go back up to the S curve and select again, if I lift up the blacks, here we go, lift up the blacks just to soften it a bit, pull down the shadows, boost the highlights, and you just boost it to what you like and what would be a nice image for you. Shift and E to collapse the image. What I might do is see if we can get a little rotation just to straighten up that horizon a bit. And there you have it. You've got a shimmer on the beach with a little horizon. Again, all you need to do is File, Export as a JPEG, and we'll call that D again. Then that's your image saved. So it's really limitless of what you can achieve, and it's really up to you. So hopefully you've enjoyed that tutorial, and I'll hand you back to me. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was helpful. It'd be really good to see some of your creations at some point in the future. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do, because you know it's free. And if you press the bell notification, that will let you know the next time I post a video. So thanks very much for watching, and here's to the next video.